In a world where everyone's working from practically anywhere, how do companies keep their data safe? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a really critical piece of security that makes all this possible, but I bet you've probably never even heard of it. It's called the Certificate Enrollment Web Service. I mean, think about it for a second. That whole idea of a secure perimeter around the office, yeah, that's pretty much ancient history. So how in the world do you get those essential digital ID cards, security certificates, onto devices that might never, ever touch the internal network? Well, that's the big puzzle we're going to solve today. Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll kick things off by talking about the challenge we're all facing. Then we'll unveil the solution. We're going to dive into how it verifies who you are, check out some real-world examples, I'll even share a surprising pro tip on performance, and then we'll wrap it all up by connecting the dots on why this thing is so incredibly important. All right, first up, let's really unpack this modern challenge. We're talking about securing a network that doesn't have any borders. See, back in the day, getting a security certificate was kind of like getting a building access card. You had to actually be inside the building. A computer had to be physically plugged into the office network, or at least on a VPN, to talk to the security office, which is the domain controller. For any company with people working all over the world, that's just a huge, huge problem. So how do we get around this? Well, Microsoft came up with a really elegant solution: the Certificate Enrollment Web Service. At its core, the Certificate Enrollment Web Service, or CES for short, is a total game changer. Just think of it like a secure, public-facing receptionist for your company's internal certificate authority. It lets devices ask for and get security certificates using HTTPS. Yep, the exact same secure tech that runs the entire web. What that means is that any device with an internet connection can now get the credentials it needs. No special network access, no VPN, nothing. And the whole process is this simple, secure, four-step dance. First, the client connects over the internet. Then, CES confirms its identity, makes sure it is who it says it is. Next, CES acts as this trusted go-between, and it goes and fetches the certificate from the internal passport office, the certification authority. And finally, it securely delivers that brand new certificate right back to the client. It's simple, it's secure, and it's all done right over the web. And the benefits here are massive. You can issue certificates across these incredibly complex company structures, like after a merger or an acquisition. You can securely set up devices for partners and remote workers. And maybe best of all, you can centralize your entire certificate system. And that means less complexity and fewer systems to manage and patch. It's all about making things simpler and extending your reach. But of course, if you're going to be handing out security certificates over the public internet, you have to be absolutely 100% sure who you're giving them to. And that brings us to our next big topic: authentication. So CES gives you a few different options to prove who you are. And the one you choose is really all about balancing security with convenience. For devices that are already inside your network, Windows Integrated is the way to go. It's totally seamless, completely automatic. For devices out on the internet, using a client certificate that's already there is like showing a high security ID. It's definitely the strongest option. And for some simpler cases, you can use a good old username and password, but that's generally seen as the least secure method. You just pick the one that fits your needs and your risk level. Now, let's talk about a super important concept called delegation. See, to get a certificate for you, the CES server needs special permission. You can think of it like giving a trusted assistant your ID to go pick up a sensitive package for you. The service has to literally impersonate you when it goes to talk to the certificate authority. And this powerful ability has a name: delegation. So when do you actually need this impersonation power? Well, if you look here, there's a pretty clear pattern. You're going to need delegation for the most secure authentication methods. That's Windows Integrated and client certificates, and when CES has to talk to a totally separate machine to get that certificate. But you don't need it for the less secure password logins, or if everything's running on the same box, or in the special, safer renewal-only mode, which we're going to talk about in just a sec. All right, let's shift gears from the what and the how to the where. How are people actually deploying CES out there in the real world? You've basically got three main flavors. The simplest is just inside a single corporate network. It also scales up beautifully for those huge, complex organizations. But really, the real magic happens when you put it in what's called a perimeter network. That's a secure buffer zone, a DMZ, that sits between your internal network and the wild west of the public internet. This is the setup that makes it safely accessible to any device, anywhere on the planet. Now, for any of those internet-facing setups, security is everything. And this is where a really, really clever configuration comes into play. It's called renewal-only mode. It's a simple change that dramatically cuts down your security risks.
Okay, check this out, because this is the crucial difference. Full enrollment mode is the powerhouse. It can issue brand new certificates to anyone it can authenticate, but all that power requires that risky impersonation permission, that delegation we just talked about. Renewal-only mode, on the other hand, is way more locked down, which makes it a whole lot safer. It can only renew certificates for clients that already have one. It uses that old certificate as proof of identity, so it doesn't need to impersonate anyone, and that makes it the absolute best, lowest risk choice for any system that's exposed to the internet.
And now it's time for a pro tip. And this one comes straight from the folks at Microsoft, who actually performance tested this system. When it comes to making this service highly available, the best way to do it might not be what you'd expect. It turns out the biggest performance killer isn't how overloaded your server is. It's network latency. The time it takes for those data packets to travel back and forth across the network, that is the real bottleneck. And the cool thing is, the CES clients were designed with exactly this in mind. So here's the deal. Forget about those complex, expensive network load balancers. The smarter, simpler way is to just publish multiple separate CES servers. The client software is actually intelligent enough that if the first server on its list doesn't respond, it just automatically tries the next one. This gives you both high availability and load balancing right out of the box with zero extra hardware to buy or manage. It's pretty brilliant. So to wrap things up, let's zoom out a little and really understand why this service is so important by putting it side by side with the technology that came before it. The older method, called CA Web Enrollment, was fundamentally manual. A person, an actual human being, had to go to a website, fill out a form, and then manually download and install the certificate. It was designed for people. CACS, on the other hand, is built for machines. It's an automated system, an API, designed for large-scale, hands-off provisioning of certificates to hundreds or even thousands of devices all at once. And honestly, this is the key takeaway. CES doesn't replace that old web enrollment page. They're complementary tools for different jobs. You use the old way for a one-off manual request, maybe for a special web server. You use CES to automatically and securely manage certificates for your entire fleet of thousands of devices, no matter where they are in the world. One is for humans, the other is for automation. So I'll just leave you with this one thought. As all of our organizations continue to break free from physical offices and our networks become truly borderless, could it be that technologies like the Certificate Enrollment Web Service are the invisible automated key that holds our entire security strategy together?